1978, and it's a Friday, so let's have something fairly lightweight and mindless. Grease, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, at least if not having seen. Grease the film was based on a 1970... Now, Grease the film was 1978, but Grease the film was based on a 1971 stage musical of the same name by Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey. I forgot what they are. One of them's an art teacher and one of them's... Anyway, the stage play was named after the American youth subculture in the 1950s known as greasers. And we also had greasers here in the UK. And if you've ever seen the 1979 film Quadrophenia, that film focuses on the opposition between mods and rockers. And rockers are basically the equivalent of greasers. They also called themselves greasers, you see. Now, the play Grease, 1971 stage musical, was set in 1959 in an urban city in America, submersed in rock and roll, and explores the ins and outs of 10 working-class teenagers as they're about to leave school life and become adults. Now, the play itself was quite raw and aggressive and vulgar, very vulgar initially, using lots of profanity and deliberately leveraging shock. Now, subjects such as teen pregnancy, gang violence, sexual exploration, class consciousness, and class conflict. The teens' backgrounds were Polish Americans and also Italian Americans. And this play was then made into an off-Broadway play. And by then it was quite significantly changed. The location, the backgrounds, a lot of a lot of the students, the swearing was starting to be watered down. The songs became diluted and more generic. And then in 1972 it moved to Broadway, and by then the cast included names such as Richard Gere, Patrick Swayze and John Travolta, but John Travolta in a different role than the one he starred in the film. Now, in 1973 it came to London. Paul Nicholas and Elaine Page became leads. By the time of the film adaptation, so this is, about 5 years later, by the time of the film adaptation, which is my subject this morning, the story had changed somewhat. The songs were different, some new songs were inserted, the whole tone was a lot safer, and it was the whole project was seen as bringing a happy film to the people, which is certainly not what the original play was about. The setting was moved from an urban city to a more rural environment, because it was originally a very inner city sort of thing. Nevertheless, if the last time you saw Grease was when you were much younger, you might be surprised if you gave it a closer watch now. It still has a lot of dark social references. It's a lot more adult than people remember it being. So if the last time you saw it was when you were sort of teenager or very young, you'd be surprised how adult a film it really is. It makes sly references throughout by being nearly rude or dirty without actually being so. For example, in the beginning, where the Pink Ladies are having lunch at an outside table, and Sandy's played by Olivia Newton-John, she's introduced as being from Australia. Stockard Channing, playing Rizzo, asks in a sort of kind of dirty way, "So, how's things down under?" And lots of little things like that, which if you were a kid, you completely missed that. And now I personally get the feeling that for the screenplay, it was written in that sort of covert adult-oriented mode for most of the beginning. But by the time of Rizzo's song, There Are Worse Things That I Could Do, or There Are Worse Things I Could Do, I suspect the rest of the storyline was handed over to someone else to finish, as it loses that cleverly dirty street edge and just becomes sanitised and harmless and basic for the latter part of the film. Now, Alan Carr, not the Alan Carr that we know now, a different Alan Carr, an older Alan Carr, ran a talent agency and managed many stars in the 60s and 70s, discovering many more. Robert Stigwood is an Australian-British music entrepreneur, or was an Australian-British music entrepreneur and also manager of the Bee Gees. Robert Stigwood hired Alan Carr as a marketing and promotion consultant for the rock opera Tommy, originally. Now, he then asked Alan Carr to run an ad campaign for Saturday Night Fever, which is another Robert Stigwood property. And also Saturday Night Fever was very successful. So based on the success of that, Alan Carr was also hired to handle the Grease project, including co-producing it. And one of Alan Carr's clients was Olivia Newton-John. That comes in handy, doesn't it? Now, Olivia Newton-John had never acted in a major film like this. She had acted in 2 quite minor Australian films that nobody's ever heard of. But she was more well known as a major singing star, very major international singing star by then. However, she couldn't imitate an American accent. She's actually technically she's English, not Australian, but she went to Australia when she was very, very young. So she has a very strong Australian accent. She couldn't imitate an American accent. So her character was rewritten to become Australian in the stage play, and all up to then. Sandy was not an Australian. She was a Polish American. Now, before that, Marie Osmond was considered for the role, and also Susan Day of the Partridge Family was considered for the role. Similarly, before John Travolta was chosen, Henry Winkler was offered the role of Danny Zuko. But he turned it down because he was afraid that it would typecast him as it was quite similar to his Happy Days character, the Fonz, which was ongoing at the time. He was playing it at the time. Now, almost all of the main characters chosen were actually far too old to convincingly play school-age students. Stockard Channing, playing Rizzo. I think Stockard Channing's doing something in the UK at the moment, in London. She works on stage in London quite frequently. Stockard Channing playing Rizzo was 34 at the time the film was released. Olivia Newton-John was 29. John Travolta was quite young at 24. Jamie Donnelly, she played the young girl Jan. She had to dye her hair black as she was 30 and prematurely greying. Lots of them way too old, so they did this kind of crow's foot test to see if they're... and they defocused a lot as well. Once John Travolta was on board, he was quite pushy about things. You know, he had quite a lot of sway by then. For example, he wanted the lead role in the song Greased Lightning. Now, Greased Lightning, John Travolta had acted in the play years before. As I say, he wasn't Danny Zuko, but he had acted in the play off Broadway. Or was it on Broadway? And this time he wanted star treatment. He pushed to sing Greased Lightning, which should be sung by the character Kenickie, because it's his car. And in the play he does sing it. John Travolta also wanted blue-black hair because he thought it would be surreal and 50s like Elvis Presley. Nevertheless, he kept reintroducing lines from the stage play back into the film where he thought it would work better, and this was generally a good thing. The sleepover scene where the girls smoke and drink and pierce Sandy's ears, the lyric of the song that they sing, Stockard Channing sings, the lyric of that song was modified to include mention of Elvis Presley. But the night that scene was shot, Elvis himself actually died. There was a major argument in the restaurant scene between Rizzo and Kenickie. It was also basically an off-screen argument between the two. But there was a major argument in the film, which was deleted because it darkened the film's tone and it was too violent, really violent argument, leaving only the scene where Rizzo ends the argument by throwing a milkshake in Kenickie's face, although she was supposed to throw it and accidentally hit Frenchie sitting next to him, which is why Rizzo says sorry Frenchie, but she just didn't get any of it. So the argument between Stockard Channing and the guy playing Kenickie was partly a real argument, so that's why she accidentally threw it at him. The song Hopelessly Devoted to You wasn't even in the film when it was shot. The song was written after the shooting, after the entire shooting was wrapped, and that entire scene with Olivia Newton-John in the garden was basically added into the film later. Similarly, the ending song, You're the One That I Want, that wasn't planned, didn't exist. It was a very last-minute change to the intended song, being very quickly written and then performed by Olivia Newton-John's songwriter. And that worked very well too, but it was a really rapid last-minute change. The film had a budget of $6 million and went on to make nearly $400 million at the box office. Now, that's pretty good, considering all the critics gave it such a negative response upon release. They really thought it was going to be a flop. But, what would they know, eh? And it's worth mentioning that at an early stage prior to Alan Carr's involvement, the film was pitched as an X-rated cartoon. That's how they were going to take it from a Broadway play. One idea at that stage was we're going to make it an animated cartoon, and an X-rated one, by Ralph Bakshi of Fritz the Cat fame, which Fritz the Cat is sort of American subculture, druggy subculture sort of cartoon. Very adult. Which is why we still have that long cartoon opening credits title sequence. That's the only remnant of it. There is actually supposed to be a prequel film in development called Summer Loving, which is going to be a musical, and as of about 6 months ago is in pre-production. So, Grease, 1978, a little bit more to it than you perhaps think. Have a good Friday, have a very good weekend, everyone. Thanks, bye.